Live from our nation's capital, it's Deadline DC with Brad Bannon.
Hi, I'm Brad Bannon, host of Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. I'm a national Democratic strategist, a columnist for The Hill in Washington, D.C., and a political analyst for CTVnews.com and News Radio KNX in Los Angeles. For the very best in aggressive progressive talk, watch Deadline DC and enlist in the anti-Trump resistance by watching us live every Monday at 3 o'clock on facebook.com /Brad Bannon /Deadline DC with Brad Bannon /videos, or on twitter.com /Brad Bannon. Every Monday on Deadline DC, I talk to the people and players behind the politics and policies that drive our great nation forward, or at least the people who are trying to stop Donald Trump from dragging the nation backward. This Monday, we have a couple of great guests to talk about the early days of the Trump regime and the potential Trump cabinet. In the first half hour, our guest will be Tara Devlin, host of the great podcast Tarabuster.
Thank you.
Then in the second half hour, CNN national security analyst Cedric Layton will join us to discuss the Trump foreign policy. But before we get to our first guest, we're going to play this clip, which is Senator Tammy Duckworth, who is a wounded combat veteran and a United States Senator, talking about the importance of sexual responsibility in the armed forces.
The question of character has also come up in regard to this leadership role. Mr. Hegseth has acknowledged that he paid a woman back in 2017 to quiet her accusations of sexual assault. He claims it was consensual sex. I'm sure you've read that Monterey police report, as we did here. It refers to the offense code as, quote, rape victim unconscious of the nature of the act. It details both the accusers and Hegseth's version of events. Here's what Senator Mark Wayne Mullins said it shows. Two people flirting with each other. Is the committee going to speak with the victim to ask if this was a misunderstanding?
Well, that will be the decision of the Republican chairman of the committee next year. I hope that we will, but I suspect that they, again, will roll over for Mr. Trump. Frankly, I will raise those questions. Remember that we've just fought over a decade of fights and overhauled the military and its treatment of military sexual trauma. It's frankly an insult and really troubling that Mr. Trump would nominate someone who has admitted that he's paid off a victim who has claimed rape allegations against him. This is not the kind of person you want to lead the Department of Defense.
That was Senator Tammy Duckworth talking about the Trump-designated Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, and the sexual assault allegations against him. Our guest in this half hour is a good friend of Deadline DC, Tara Devlin, who is the host of the great podcast Tarabuster. Tara, thanks for joining us. Now, let me set the stage before I ask you the question.
Sure.
We just elected a adjudicated sexual predator as president.
Yes.
So should we be surprised that his potential cabinet is full of sexual predators, including Pete Hegseth?
No, that's a long-standing Republican tradition of nominating sexual predators to positions of authority in this country. If you haven't noticed, I mean, it goes back a long way, like Kavanaugh, and before that, Clarence Thomas. Those are just off the top of my head. There's many, many others. I remember
And we would be remiss in not mentioning Matt Gaetz.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Who declined to take his position as Attorney General after it was clear he couldn't get enough support in the Senate for his nomination. House Ethics report says he paid for sex for 2 underage women.
Right, right. Well, that's another way that they play the victim card, though, too, which is, everyone's picking on me. I always remember during the Kavanaugh hearings, whatever that was, and because in the clip, Tammy Duckworth talked about just being fit, and the type of character one would expect to lead government agencies. But this is all by the wayside in the Republican Party. Whenever you bring out the truth about them, they proclaim themselves to be the victims. And it's part of why we're in this boat to begin with, because it really does go back to the fact that they own half the media, that half of the media is simply repeating that baloney that they spread, that they're the victim. I mean, you could hear it. I remember they did some man on the streets with Republicans about Kavanaugh, and they're like, "Oh, it's such a what a horrible thing they're doing to him." Right? I mean, when he's like banging the table, crying, screaming about the revenge of the Clintons. I mean, it's just insane. We're living in a bizarro world at this time. That's how it feels. And it's only going to get worse, frankly. Yeah. And Hepsat, he's not fit to lead, but that's what they like about him. He was taken off Joe Biden's detail because he's got the very troubling ties to very, troubling right wing groups. And I was in the military, so I was in the National Guard, and you go through a lot of training about, don't be a racist, don't be but because it's all about unit cohesion, and don't be mean to your fellow soldiers, to have respect and all that. I didn't need a lesson in that, but I guess the Army felt like they needed to do that. And I was actually impressed that they had zero tolerance for it at the time. And this is what troubles me too. I can't imagine how young women would want to join a force, or even serve in a force now if they're there, when their safety is just it's not really taken seriously at all. And their dignity too, the dignity of their service. It's really an abomination, I think.
But I guess we couldn't expect any better, because the president-elect was adjudicated as a sexual predator
Yes,
in the E. Jean
that's right.
Carroll case.
Yep.
So this is his revenge on
Yep.
the legal system and against women for voting against him.
Mm-hmm. But they think that is, I don't know if you know this, but I'm sure you do. But if you've ever talked to any of your friends who happen to be MAGA, whatever the hell, they really think that it's all a witch hunt. And this is why it's very difficult to have to fight, legally and peacefully fight somebody on the field of ideas when they're not living in reality. They really aren't. In their world, this is what they are being told by Fox News and all these, even if they listen to, pundits like, what's his name? Like, it just came out that they were being funded by Russia, so they're being fed this pro-Trump propaganda where Trump can do no wrong and everyone's out to get him, which it baffles me why the Democrats don't fight that, bring it out that that Fox News was fined the largest fine in American history for lying to its viewers, and that these popular right-wing pundits are being funded by the Kremlin. I mean, that's the reality, and you have to ask yourself why. Why do they want to put this baboon into the Oval Office to destroy pesky democracy once and for all? And it's really an insult, because the way that they act and they put these unqualified people in office, to me, it is so offensive to everyone who ever fought, bled, and died for this country. It's really, I wouldn't put somebody who hates, cats to babysit my cats. You don't put people who hate the very thing they're supposed to represent into authority. But this is all, like you said, it's a hostile takeover of the government, and yeah, they want to destroy it from the inside.
By the way, I should remind our audience that in the second half hour, we're going to discuss Russian influence peddling in the Trump cabinet with CNN military analyst Cedric Layton, who will talk about the ties that Tulsi Gabbard, for instance, has to the Russians. So it's a very serious issue. Okay, we're going to go to a very short break here for it will give our listeners on radio a little vacation, a very tiny little vacation, but we're going to continue this interview on video on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube with our guest, Tara Devlin, the host of Tarabuster. Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Our guest in this half hour is Tara Devlin, host of the great Tarabuster podcast. She's here today to talk about the rise of the Trump administration as it sinks slowly into the ground. Let me ask you this, Tara. I'd like to get your opinion on this. What happened on Election Day?
Well,
why did Trump win?
Well, I think it kind of ties into what we were saying and what we've talked about before. I do believe that we are up against this juggernaut of a propaganda system that has influenced and really captured half the country. Now, let's not forget that it's not a 50-50 country. He won very slightly. He doesn't have a mandate. And in fact, his 1-point-something percent popular vote lead is shrinking daily because they're still counting votes in California. It's sad that so many Democrats didn't come out to vote for Harris because, and in fact, we would have won if they did, if the 12 million who voted for Biden showed up on Election Day and voted for Harris, we would have a much different outcome. So, only 60-something% of the voting population voted. So he has half of that, which is 35% or around. And that's the amount of people in the country who are authoritarian followers. They're not, they're not a majority.
Ask you, Tara, why didn't those Democrats come out and vote? You're right. More people voted for Joe Biden in 20 than voted for Kamala Harris in 24. Right. What happened? Why?
Well, here, I really do believe, because everything starts with a conversation. Human beings are storytellers, and a lot of people aren't paying attention until the very last minute. But if all you hear on right-wing media is how picked on Trump is and how Biden sucks and he's wandering off and he's, like they literally fabricated this propaganda on the New York Post, and it was on the cover of the Post. Biden wanders off during Nuremberg ceremony. That it was a completely fabricated, edited post that they posted, and they put it on the cover. I mean, this is what but they believe it because they're not getting the other side. Then the other side, that's supposed to be the liberal media, so-called, only because they have some standards that they don't blatantly lie, but all they do are polls, and that in itself is like, oh, Trump is up in the polls, down in the polls, and people don't believe that the economy is good, even though they have the metrics and they'll show the charts and all that. But the Democrats simply don't get out there and toot their own horn enough. And that's what I feel. I mean, if Harris should have been out there every day at a ribbon cutting ceremony, because manufacturing's up in the country now. They're even they're expanding solar panel factories in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district. Why didn't Harris go there and point out?
Tara, I'm going to have to stop you. We got a brief break coming up, but we'll be right back with our radio audience, our video audience, and Tara Devlin. Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. I want to remind our radio listeners who are back with us that you can watch us as well as listen to us. You can watch us on twitter.com/Brad Bannon and on facebook.com Deadline DC with Brad Bannon /videos, and we're also on YouTube. Our guest in this half hour is Tara Devlin, host of the Tarabuster podcast and a great friend of Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Tara, what do progressives need to do now to recover from this electoral disaster?
Right. You know, what I fear the most is that because Democrats have a long history too of learning the wrong lesson, it feels to me, from a loss. They think that every time they lose, they got to be more like Republicans somehow. They got to be more, the only way I really want them to be more like Republicans is to unapologetically fight for the fact that we're on the right side of history. I always say this on my show: we're on the right side of history, decency, dignity, democracy, and humanity. Why are you so timid about that? I mean, the Democratic Party. I was just when I was listening to Tom Harmon earlier, he brought up that a judge in Texas is undoing all these overtime laws that Biden signed. And do these people in Texas who some of them voted for Trump, do they even know that what Biden did for them? And who, because Trump was out there, oh, no tax on overtime, no tax, everybody, he's a liar. He's a filthy con man. He's a con man. And I mean, this is why
perhaps the greatest con man who's ever lived.
That's actually the truth. In fact, that's the one thing I say about him. He sucks at everything. He sucks at business, but he is the most successful con man that's ever walked this earth. And he needs he needs his eager and willing co-conspirators. He's got plenty of them, but they're all they're very underwhelming people. And it kind of reminds me of course, the rise of the Nazis, because it was kind of the same. Like life's losers found a purpose in in the Nazi party, and they were all trying to vie for the dear leader's attention constantly. And that's what's going on now. Even, they're apparently having screaming matches. These people are not fit. If a student election went awry like that, into screaming matches and name calling, and this is what they brought to the House of Representatives, running through the halls, screaming at people. These kids would be put in detention, but it's okay for, I mean, Trump loves it. He loves when all his minions fight, but it's so depressing and embarrassing. And for the Democratic Party, what I really want them to do is start fighting. And, we really need to I mean, for real, you can't bring a strongly worded email to the to save America from a fascist. There's somebody who his own chief of staff said has a fundamental disdain for American values. I mean, and people voted for that because maybe they never heard it, because I had some Facebook spat with somebody I didn't know was a maggot, but whatever, on my Facebook. And it's just baffling because everything that he's talking about it's not true. It's simply not true. And I did a thing on my show. I voted for, because people are complaining they're losing friends for voting for Trump. And some woman was like, I voted for Trump because he's going to save the babies and, for trans kids. I don't want no kids coming home, change genders. And I mean, everything how could you really battle that when it's not true? First of all, the abortion rate is up in the country. Why don't the Democrats constantly repeat that? Since they overturned Roe, abortions are up. All that criminalizing abortion does is kill women. That's it. And if they really wanted to, if they were really pro-life, they'd vote Democratic. Because the abortion rate goes down. And as we know, under Democratic policies, these are measurable, demonstrable facts, along with the fact that the economy does better under Democrats. These are all facts. And I don't know how we're in for a very rough 4 years. Unfortunately, I always say the good people are going to get hurt too, but I don't know what it is. These MAGA people, they only see the light when something affects them. But trust me, I bet you, on Fox News, they're not going to tell them this is Trump's fault. That's why media is so important. And yeah, it's really how we're going to win. If we had a whole system like the Republicans have, funded by billionaires. I mean, the fact that we have Elon Musk, who voted for him? He's like President Musk and his pet, traitor Trump. It's just it's an abomination. The fact that they all worship him too. They all love Elon Musk when he's like the biggest sociopath who hates workers. All he does is fire people and stiff them on severance, and he's promising to fire millions of workers. I mean, it's like, hello, and they're all cheering this?
including federal employees.
Yes, because they want to destroy the government. It's like, just like crooks want to destroy the cops, right? It's because the government's the only thing that stands up to that kind of power. And, the fact that Elon Musk is on track to be the first trillionaire, I mean, that's just absolutely repugnant. And he's talking about firing people. Why don't you skim one of those billions off the top and we can all have a nice day, right? But they don't care about people. He's talking about himself. I don't know what the hell. It's like a sickness, How much money do you need? Really? And but it used to be commonly understood that you wouldn't want this kind of bloated fortune, as Teddy Roosevelt called it, to overwhelm and corrupt the government. That's what we have.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Do you think, Tara, there's a sense of resignation? I've talked to some Democrats and they say, oh boy, we gave it our best shot and I don't know what to do now. Maybe I'm going to move to Japan or stop following politics. You get a sense of that?
A lot of people have done that. I saw that just personally on my Facebook and whatnot, people saying, I'm out of here. But yes, there is a sense of resignation, but it only because, like I said, it's very frustrating. I'm sure you hear this all the time from Democrats begging the Democrats to fight, and it doesn't seem like they do. And part of the reason, I don't know, for example, I can't stand, I think we've talked about this before, how the Republicans, they can't even call the Democratic Party by its name. They call it the Democrat Party, which is very babyish and juvenile, but the Democrats never pointed out that they could use that. They could judo that and say, look, see, they can't even this is who they are. They're like babies. They're immature. And, but they never do. It's crazy. How many times does somebody get to call you outside your name until you look like a beaten, and wounded animal? I don't know. For me, if somebody kept calling me the wrong name, I'd be like, hello. Yeah. It's very disrespectful.
Tara, unfortunately, we're getting close to being out of time. I want to thank Tara Devlin, the host of Tarabuster and a great friend of Deadline DC. In the second half hour, we'll talk to CNN military and national security analyst Cedric Layton, who's going to talk about Russian influence peddling among Trump appointees to national security positions. We'll be right back with more of Deadline DC with Brad Bannon right after this break. So don't go anywhere. We still got half the show to go, and we want you to stick around for every last second of it.